We've had a nice stretch of June weather with mid-70s for highs and no mosquitoes, so walking in the woods has been excellent. As of today, the heat has arrived. All June I've been in search of nesting pileated woodpeckers. No luck, but I did manage to find a northern flicker poking its head out of its nest hole. On our annual trip to Ontario, we saw many black bears. They seem to be intentionally bringing their cubs out to the road for food. People also attract pelicans. Whenever we would stop to fish somewhere, the pelican would fly directly to our boat and wait for a dead fish or minnow. Likewise, the bald eagles have been trained to sit on this rock whenever a boat shows up so that they may get an occasional perch. I actually think they would come and take it out of your hand if you held it up for them. The geese also like to bring their babies to people, but only because they want to poop in your lawn. Returning home, the dick sisal can be found on farm field power lines, along with the broad-winged hawk. Sandhill cranes are out everywhere with their babies, but this pair didn't have a colt. They didn't seem to mind me standing only 20 feet away. At first I thought this was a baby cedar waxwing begging for food, but I believe this is just a female participating in a courtship ritual. They're somewhat late nesters, and part of courtship involves the exchange of gifts, berries specifically. Sometimes they pass the berry back and forth, but in this case the female demands to eat all the berries, even one that was already digested. When two berries still didn't satisfy her, the male leaves, somewhat annoyed. Gray-crested flycatchers are the most recognizable flycatcher, and also the easiest call to identify with its loud squeak. Where the woods meets the field, there is always an indigo bunting calling. They must call all day. The crowhasson must be home to dozens of nesting pairs because you cannot take a walk without hearing several. Despite their brilliant blue, they can be tough to spot in the trees, even when you know where they're calling from. Over the prairie grasslands, turkey vultures ride thermals most of the day. I finally got a somewhat close look at a bobolink. You can also spot them on fences and hayfields. It's nice when they get up on a stalk like this. When they're in the grass, you just hear them and can never spot them. Bluebirds also love to perch on stalks near their nest. They are hunting all day to bring bugs back for their babies. Who is calling in the background? It's the dickcissel. Such a common bird in fields in the summer, but I always enjoy their handsome bow tie. More hunting for pileatids. I was sure I found them, but this time it was a red-bellied woodpecker in its nest cavity. When I walk in mature forests looking for pileatids, I often hear scarlet tanagers. They also seem to call most of the day, and they can be found up in the canopy. They're not quite as common as indigo buntings, but still very common at the crowhasson. About the only warblers you can get in the Twin Cities in summer is the yellow warbler and the blue-wing warbler, which is also yellow. The blue-wing has a very buzzy call which I can't hear, so Merlin has to tell me they are around. But there must be several nesting at the crowhasson each year, as they are predictable to find along the Crow River. Another bird whose high-pitched call I can barely hear is the pewee, which is also in the woods calling most of the time. In the pond, the baby wood ducks are still sticking very close to mom. I included this one hen mallard shot because I think they are underappreciated. Great egrets and herons always have a tricky task trying to convince a fish they have caught by the tail to turn and go down their long neck. After a long delay, this egret is finally successful. I'd come to Medicine Lake in Plymouth looking for two rare birds. The American avocet had been hanging out on a couple of beaches, and a western green had been diving out in the middle. Since neither bird made an appearance, I got video of some purple martins at the large martin house. I also captured some ospreys looking for fish. I actually made a couple of trips to Baker Park to check on a nesting least bittern, which I can never seem to get a photo of. There are a few osprey nests in that area, and sometimes 4 osprey will all be fishing. I'm still hoping to one day capture one emerging from underwater with a fish after a plunge dive. This is the time of year where you can see hummingbirds everywhere. They have also ramped back up their feeder visits. Our deck is also frequently visited by a robin feeding its newly hatched babies. And a house wren who's using the nesting boxes next door. Another bird that is always calling in grassy fields is the grasshopper sparrow. I assume it's calling. Its mouth is open, but I can't hear the frequency. I can hear the yellowthroat say witchety witchety witchety. One afternoon, I made a visit to the Sherburne Wildlife Refuge to check on the baby swans. There are 3 different pairs of babies. This family had 6. One highlight was the nesting black terns. Like nesting swallows and blackbirds, they like to dive bomb you when you get too close to their nest. Finally, one of the adult swans had enough of ducking these dive bombs. There was another bird also calling in the marsh the whole time. It was fun watching the snipe plunge its long bill deep in the mud for a snack. Another thing I enjoyed was watching the cygnets mirror their parents' behavior. When they got out of the water, they all participated in feather maintenance, doing the exact same things. The babies seemed to get bored of it, but they knew they must continue the ritual until the parents felt satisfied. I've always thought of the green heron as more of a stealth and ambush hunter, but if you watch them in the marsh, they do a lot of running and chasing, like a little blue heron or a reddish egret. Here is a different family of swans who had 3 babies, which all seem quite relaxed. The whole time I was watching, the black terns were skimming the water for fish. At one point, I was able to capture a catch and release. This burst of photos shows something that probably happens all the time. The tern got his minnow, but then it wriggled free and fell back into the water, forcing the tern to pump the brakes. A second scoop was attempted, but lunch escaped. All of that in a millisecond that you would never know happened without the camera. We'll see you next time.